Every Halloween, we put on costumes, laugh with friends, and run from house to house collecting candy. The streets are alive with laughter, the smell of autumn leaves, and the crunch of footsteps on the pavement. But for some, Halloween is more than costumes and candy. Some believe that on October 31st, the barrier between the living and the dead grows dangerously thin. Every year, people claim to witness things that cannot be explained. Figures in the shadows, whispers from empty houses, or eyes staring from windows where no one should be. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 chilling stories of real paranormal encounters that happened on Halloween night. Stay with me until the end, because the last story is the one that still makes locals too scared to speak of it. In a quiet town in Massachusetts, there's a decaying Victorian home at the end of Maple Street. The locals call it the Widow's House. It has been empty for nearly a century, but the legend says a woman named Eleanor Whitmore died inside during the 1920s under mysterious circumstances. Some say she was heartbroken. Others whisper darker stories. Every Halloween, children walking past swear they see her ghost, staring out from the upstairs window. For years, it was just a story to scare newcomers. Until one Halloween night, a group of 13-year-olds decided to prove it wrong. The kids ran screaming down the street. But the next morning, curiosity got the better of one boy. He returned in daylight. The stone stuff he found made his stomach turn. On the inside of the glass, where no one had entered for decades, was a fresh handprint. Since then, even on sunny afternoons, no one dares to walk past the widow's house. Tell me, if you saw that face smiling back at you, would you have stayed another second? They crept up the cracked walkway, flashlights flickering across broken porch steps. The wind whistled through the trees, and the front door was chained shut. But one boy knocked anyway. The hollow sound echoed through the house. At first, nothing. Then, one of the kids gasped, "Look! Up there!" Behind the dusty glass stood the pale outline of a woman. She wore a black dress, her head tilted unnaturally. Her eyes were fixed on them. And then she smiled. Not a warm smile, not comforting. This was sharp, wrong. The kids ran screaming down the street. But the next morning, curiosity got the better of one boy. He returned in daylight. The stone stuff he found made his stomach turn. On the inside of the glass, where no one had entered for decades, was a fresh handprint. Since then, even on sunny afternoons, no one dares to walk past the widow's house. Tell me, if you saw that face smiling back at you, would you have stayed another second? Fast forward to Illinois, 2009. A family sat on their porch handing out candy. The street was quiet, nearly empty by 9 p.m. Then, the doorbell rang again. On the porch stood a boy, maybe 8 years old. His costume looked unusual, old-fashioned, like something straight out of the 1930s. Suspenders, a flat cap, and a strange paper mask covering his face. The mother chuckled softly. "Well, aren't you old school?" She dropped candy into his bag. The boy whispered, "Thank you," and then he turned to leave. But the father noticed something strange. The clothes weren't store-bought. They were frayed, worn, stained, as if they had survived decades. "Hey, cool costume," the dad called. "Where'd you get it?" The boy froze. Slowly he turned. and just stared. Then he tilted his mask slightly and walked into the night. Minutes later, the father checked the street. Empty. No footprints. Nothing. Confused, they reviewed the doorbell camera. The footage showed the door opening, the parents smiling, their hands reaching out with candy. But there was no boy standing there. The mother swore she had seen him, heard him, even felt the candy bag in his hands. Since that night, every Halloween, they leave a small bowl of candy with a note for the boy in the mask. If you opened your door and saw him standing there, would you hand him candy too? Our final story comes from Kentucky, an abandoned cemetery, forgotten by time. 4 teenagers snuck in one Halloween night. Broken headstones leaned unevenly against the earth. The rusty iron gate groaned as they pushed it open. They lit candles, daring each other to tell ghost stories. Laughter echoed across the empty cemetery, until the air grew still. No crickets, no wind. Then, whispers. At first, faint, like the wind rustling through the leaves. Then louder. Overlapping voices, dozens of them. Words too fast to understand. "Who's there?" one boy shouted nervously. Silence. Then, closer this time. The whispers circled them. A girl screamed as a freezing hand gripped her wrist. She spun around, nothing, and around the flames stood tall, unmoving shadows, figures watching them. The teens never returned, but to this day, locals say if you stand in that graveyard at midnight on Halloween, you'll hear your own name whispered from the dark. Would you dare enter after dark? Teens never returned, but to this day, locals say if you stand in that graveyard at midnight on Halloween, you'll hear your own name whispered from the dark. Would you dare enter after dark? From a ghostly woman watching from her window, to a trick-or-treater who may not be alive, to voices that still whisper among forgotten graves, Halloween is more than candy and costumes. It's the one night the dead come closest to the living. Thank you for joining me for these true paranormal tales. If you enjoyed them, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories from the shadows. And remember, when you hear a knock this Halloween, be sure it's really a trick-or-treater, because sometimes it isn't.